Jake Thompson had been a truck driver for over 15 years, and he thought he'd seen everything the road had to offer: long stretches of empty highway, bizarre roadside attractions, and the occasional reckless driver. But nothing prepared him for what happened that night on Route 46. It was just after midnight, and rain poured down in thick sheets, the windshield wipers struggling to keep up. Jake sipped lukewarm coffee from his thermos, the bitterness sharp but familiar. His delivery deadline loomed, and Route 46 was the fastest way to shave off a few hours, despite the warnings he'd heard from other truckers. Strange stories floated around about that stretch of road, but Jake had always shrugged them off as superstitious nonsense. Roads were roads, and ghosts didn't pay the bills. The headlights cut through the darkness, illuminating the slick asphalt ahead. Miles slipped by, each one marked by the rhythmic thump of tires against uneven pavement. Jake's eyelids grew heavy, and he reached over to turn up the radio. Static. He twisted the dial, but every station was the same: white noise and faint whispers that made his skin crawl. He turned it off, preferring the silence over the unsettling sound. As he rounded a bend, his headlights caught movement up ahead. A woman stood by the roadside, drenched, her arm outstretched in a desperate attempt to hitch a ride. Jake's foot eased off the accelerator. It was the middle of nowhere, and leaving her out there felt wrong. He slowed the truck to a stop, rolled down the passenger window slightly, and called out, "You all right, m?" She nodded, her hair plastered to her face. "Car broke down. Can you give me a ride to the next town?" Her voice was soft, almost melodic, but there was something unsettling about how calm she seemed. Jake hesitated, glancing at the empty road. "Just a ride to town," he reassured himself, unlocking the door. "Hop in." The woman climbed into the passenger seat without a word, her clothes soaked and clinging to her frame. She didn't shiver, didn't complain, just sat there, hands folded neatly in her lap. Jake offered her a spare towel, but she shook her head. They drove in silence for a while, the only sounds the rain pounding on the roof and the steady hum of the engine. After a few miles, Jake glanced over. "So, what's your name?" She smiled faintly. "You can call me Anna." Something about that smile sent a chill down his spine, but he shrugged it off. "Well, Anna, next town's about 20 miles out. Shouldn't take long." She didn't respond, just kept staring straight ahead. Minutes passed. Jake's nerves settled, until he noticed the temperature in the cab dropping. His breath fogged up in front of him. He reached for the heater controls, but they were already on full blast. That's when he glanced at Anna. Her seatbelt lay flat across the seat, but she wasn't there. His heart lurched, eyes darting around the cab. "Where?" he started, but a whisper cut him off, right beside his ear. "You shouldn't have stopped." Jake slammed on the brakes, the truck skidding across the wet pavement. His hands trembled on the wheel. He looked around, no sign of her. Heart pounding, he hit the gas, desperate to get off that cursed road. But glancing in the mirror, he saw her, sitting in the back seat, smiling. Jake's heart raced as he glanced repeatedly into the rearview mirror. She was there, Anna, her soaked hair clinging to her pale face, that unsettling smile never wavering. He gripped the steering wheel so tightly his knuckles turned white, his breath quick and shallow. This isn't real," he muttered, eyes darting between the road and the mirror. But every glance confirmed the nightmare. She sat there, calm, as if she belonged. He punched the gas pedal, the truck roaring forward through the rain-soaked darkness. The road stretched endlessly ahead, yet his destination seemed no closer. His GPS flickered erratically, the screen glitching before going completely black. Panic clawed at his chest, sweat beading on his forehead despite the freezing temperature inside the cab. "Why me?" Jake's voice cracked with fear. He glanced in the mirror again, empty. Relief flooded through him, until her voice whispered from the passenger seat, "You shouldn't have stopped." His head snapped toward her, nothing but an empty seat. "Get out of my truck," he shouted, voice echoing in the confined space. His pulse thudded in his ears, adrenaline surging. He reached for his phone, desperate to call for help, but the screen displayed only one message: "You can't leave." Suddenly, the headlights caught something on the road, a figure. Her. standing in front of the truck. Jake swerved violently, the tires screeching as the vehicle fishtailed across the slick pavement. His shoulder slammed into the door, pain shooting through him. When the truck finally skidded to a stop, he sat there, chest heaving, hands trembling. "Pull yourself together, Jake. Just keep driving," he whispered. He shifted into gear, foot pressing the accelerator. But as the truck rolled forward, the road changed. The familiar stretch of Route 46 was gone. In its place was a narrow, fog-covered path lined with gnarled trees that seemed to claw at the night sky. Panic turned to dread. This wasn't possible. Then, tap, tap, tap. Fingertips drummed against the window beside him. Slowly, Jake turned his head. Anna's face stared back from outside, eyes hollow, mouth twisting into something that was no longer a smile. "Why didn't you help me, Jake?" Her voice seeped into the cab like smoke, choking him. "I didn't know. I just thought," he stammered, voice breaking. His mind reeled back to 2 years ago. A night just like this one. Rain, darkness, a figure on the roadside. He had driven past, convincing himself someone else would stop. "You left me to die," she whispered. "Now it's your turn to be forgotten." Jake slammed on the gas again, heart pounding. The truck surged forward, but no matter how fast he went, the road never changed. Endless. Twisting. Trapping him in a loop with no way out. And then, the radio crackled to life. Static. Then her voice. "You'll never make it out, Jake. Drive as fast as you like. I'll always be here." He screamed in frustration, punching the dashboard. "Leave me alone." But she only laughed, soft, echoing, and endless. Jake's knuckles ached from gripping the wheel, the road ahead a twisted maze of darkness and fog. His chest tightened with every passing second, heart thudding like a war drum. No matter how far he drove, the road stretched endlessly. His GPS flickered to life again, displaying one word: nowhere. "This isn't real. It's just a nightmare," he muttered, blinking hard. But no amount of denial changed what he saw in the mirror. Her. Anna. Always there. Her smile never faltering, eyes fixed on him like a predator savoring the chase. The radio sputtered with static. Then her voice. "Almost there, Jake. Ready for the end. What do you want from me?" His voice cracked. "I didn't mean to leave you. I was scared." Scared? Her laughter filled the cab, cold and hollow. "So was I. Lying there, bleeding, waiting for someone to stop. For you to stop." Tears blurred his vision. "I'm sorry," he shouted, fists pounding the steering wheel. "Please, just let me go." But the road twisted tighter. Trees on either side gnarled into grotesque shapes, their branches reaching out like skeletal hands. The headlights flickered, then died. Darkness swallowed him. His breath caught in his throat. A soft tapping returned. Tap, tap, tap. This time, from the roof. He froze. "No, no." Then, bang. The roof dented inward. Bang. Another dent. His pulse spiked, heart slamming against his ribs. He fumbled for the door handle, but it wouldn't budge. Panic clawed at his chest. And then, silence. Slowly, trembling, Jake glanced at the passenger seat. Empty. His breath hitched. "Is it over?" But a whisper in his ear shattered the hope. "Look in the mirror." Hands shaking, he glanced up at the rear view. Her face filled it. Pale. Hollow-eyed. Mouth stretched impossibly wide. "Time's up," she hissed. The truck lurched, then flipped. Metal crunched. Glass shattered. The world spun in a chaos of noise and darkness. When everything stopped, Jake lay upside down, head throbbing. Rain poured through the shattered windshield. Blinking through blood and tears, he reached for his seatbelt, but it snapped, trapping him. His gaze shifted outside. Anna stood there, still, calm, watching. "Please." His voice was a rasp. "Don't." She knelt beside the wreck, face inches from his. Next time, stop. Then, darkness. 3 days later, police discovered the wreck on an empty stretch of Route 46. No skid marks. No signs of another vehicle. Just Jake, lifeless behind the wheel. His face frozen in a look of pure terror. The oddest part? A set of footprints leading away from the scene, but no return prints. And scrawled across the inside windshield, fogged from the cold, were 5 chilling words. He should have stopped for her. Mark Reynolds was no stranger to late-night hauls. 14 years on the road had taught him that the darkness held its own stories, some best left untold. But nothing he'd experienced prepared him for this. It was just past 1 a.m. when Mark found himself on Route 87, a desolate highway stretching through miles of empty desert. His eyelids grew heavy despite the strong coffee he'd downed at the last truck stop. To stay alert, he flipped on his CB radio, hoping for some friendly chatter. Static. Then, Breaker 19, anyone out there? Mark's voice echoed into the emptiness. Silence. He sighed, ready to switch it off, when a voice crackled through, low, distorted. Keep driving, Mark. Don't stop. His hand froze on the dial. What? Who is this? No response. Just static. He chuckled nervously. Probably some prankster, he muttered, shaking his head. Yet, the voice had known his name. Coincidence? Had to be. Miles slipped by. The desert stretched endlessly, moonlight casting eerie shadows across the dunes. Mark reached for his thermos, but the radio crackled again. He's waiting ahead. His stomach twisted. Who the hell is this? His voice rose, nerves fraying. Silence returned. Just the hum of tires on asphalt and the rhythmic thud of his heartbeat echoing in his ears. He rubbed his face, glancing at the clock. 1:33 a.m. Almost halfway there. Then, headlights appeared in the distance. A car, parked on the shoulder, hazard lights blinking. As Mark approached, he slowed instinctively. Someone stood beside it, a man in a dark coat, waving. Memories of horror stories truckers swapped at diners flashed through his mind. Don't stop. He pressed the accelerator, steering wide. His gaze flicked to the rearview mirror. The man stood motionless, arm still raised, eyes seemingly locked on Mark's. Don't stop, the radio repeated, the voice eerily familiar now, his own. A chill crawled up his spine. What the hell is going on? But the road offered no answers. Just darkness, and the growing sense that something was following him. Minutes later, headlights appeared again. Same spot. Same car. Same man. Mark's breath caught. No. I just passed that. Panic surged. He gripped the wheel tighter, knuckles white. His mind raced for explanations. A dream, exhaustion, something. Then the voice returned, whispering through the static. No matter how far you drive, you can't outrun what's coming. Mark's pulse pounded. The road stretched on, endless, trapping him. And in the rearview mirror, those headlights never faded. Never changed. Always there. Mark's palms were slick with sweat, the steering wheel cold beneath his grip. Every glance at the rearview mirror sent a fresh jolt of dread through his chest. The headlights behind him never changed. Same distance. Same steady glow. Always there. He reached for the CB radio, voice tight. Whoever this is, cut it out. This isn't funny. Static answered. Then, he's closer now. His voice, echoed through the cab, sending chills racing down his spine. This is some sick prank, Mark muttered, foot pressing harder on the accelerator. The desert blurred past, moonlight casting twisted shadows across the road. His GPS flickered, rerouting endlessly, before going dark. Nothing but blackness. Up ahead, something appeared on the road, a figure. Him. Mark's breath caught. It wasn't possible, couldn't be. But as he neared, the figure lifted an arm, waving him down. His face, it was his own. No, no, no. Mark swerved, tires screeching as the truck veered onto the shoulder. Dust and gravel kicked up in a blinding cloud. The figure vanished behind him. Heart pounding, he fought to steady the wheel, adrenaline surging through every nerve. His mind raced. Was he hallucinating? Exhausted? Dreaming? Then, tap, tap, tap. Fingers drummed against the passenger side window. Slowly, Mark turned his head. Empty seat. No one there. Until the rearview mirror revealed himself, grinning from the back seat, eyes black as night. "Keep driving, Mark," the voice whispered in his ear. "You're almost there." Panic exploded. "Get out! Get out of my truck!" Mark slammed the brakes. The truck skidded to a halt. He fumbled for the door handle, flinging it open and stumbling into the cold desert night. His breath came in quick, panicked gasps. The road stretched silent and empty. No headlights. No figure. Just nothing. Losing it. "I'm losing it," he whispered, raking a hand through his hair. His heart pounded in his ears. "Get it together, Mark." Then, his truck engine roared to life, on its own. His head snapped toward it. The cab lights flicked on. And in the driver's seat, himself. Grinning. The Mark in the cab leaned out the window. "You coming? We've got miles to go." Mark stumbled back, mind screaming run. But his feet felt rooted, terror pinning him in place. The CB radio crackled once more. "No use running, Mark. You can't escape yourself." The headlights flared blindingly bright. And everything went dark. Mark's eyes fluttered open to darkness. His head throbbed, disoriented and spinning. Gravel dug into his back as he realized he was lying in the middle of the road. "How did I get here?" He sat up, breath hitching. His truck was parked a few yards away, headlights casting twin beams into the empty night. The door was open. The engine idled. "This isn't real, it can't be," he whispered, heart pounding. But the CB radio crackled to life again, his own voice echoing through the static. "You can't run, Mark. This road never ends, and neither does this." His pulse quickened. "Stop. Leave me alone." His voice cracked with desperation. Laughter answered, low, chilling, his own laugh. The truck's headlights flickered, casting grotesque shadows across the empty highway. Then, footsteps. Behind him. Slow. Steady. Getting closer. Mark scrambled to his feet, spinning around. No one there. Then the driver's seat of the truck shifted. Something climbed out. No, someone. His breath caught in his throat. It was him. But twisted. Pale skin stretched tight over hollow cheeks, black eyes gleaming in the darkness. A grin spread across the doppelganger's face. His face. "What do you want?" Mark's voice quivered. "What you gave me," the double rasped. "Fear. Regret. This is the road you made. Now you drive it forever." Mark stumbled backward, panic clawing at his chest. He turned, ready to run, only to freeze. More headlights appeared. One after another. Dozens. Each truck pulling up revealed a driver stepping out. Each face, his own. Variations twisted in horror, some with gaping mouths, others with empty eye sockets, all grinning. "No! No! This isn't happening!" Mark screamed, hands clutching his head. "You passed the sign," one doppelganger whispered. "Didn't you see it?" Confused, trembling, Mark's eyes darted to the side of the road. Faintly illuminated by the headlights was a rusted sign, weather-worn and barely legible. "Welcome to Dead Man's Loop. No exit." His stomach dropped. Dead Man's Loop. He remembered the stories. Truckers spoke of it in hushed tones. A cursed road you never leave. He'd always laughed it off. Urban legends. Or so he thought. This can't be. I didn't mean. Doesn't matter, the doppelgangers chorused, voices overlapping in a haunting echo. You're part of the road now. Mark turned, bolted to his truck, and jumped in. His shaking hands fumbled the keys, already in the ignition. Slamming it into gear, he floored the pedal. The truck roared down the highway, tires screeching against asphalt. But the road stretched endlessly. The speedometer climbed. 70, 80, 100 miles per hour. No turns. No exits. Just darkness and that sign flashing past him again. And again. Welcome to Dead Man's Loop. No exit. His breath quickened. Come on, come on. But the road curved back on itself. Headlights appeared ahead. His truck. Driving toward him. Himself in the driver's seat. Mark screamed. Crash. Glass shattered. Metal twisted. His world exploded into chaos. When authorities found the wreckage the next morning, they were baffled. The truck had crashed into itself. Two identical rigs crumpled together. But there was only one body. Mark Reynolds. Dead on impact. And his CB radio? Still on. Static. Then a voice. His voice. Breaker 19. Anyone out there? I can't get off this road. Someone, please, help me. But no one answers. No one ever does. Ben Carter had heard all the stories. Truckers swapping ghost tales at roadside diners, talking about phantom lights, haunted highways, and hitchhikers who weren't there. He'd always laughed them off. Superstitions, he thought. Just boredom playing tricks on the mind. But that night, that one night on Highway 22 changed everything. Rain poured in thick sheets, hammering against the windshield, wipers struggling to keep up. His headlights barely pierced the downpour. Visibility? Almost none. The road stretched ahead, a winding, empty stretch surrounded by dense woods. Glancing at the clock, 2:17 a.m., Ben sighed. Just a few more hours, he muttered, fatigue creeping in. His thermos was empty. No coffee stops for miles. Gotta push through. Then, he saw it. A figure. Standing on the shoulder. Thumb extended. His first instinct? Drive on. You didn't pick up hitchhikers, especially at this hour. Too many risks. But something about the person, the soaked jacket, the slumped posture, triggered a pang of guilt. Probably stranded. What if it was me out here? Against his better judgment, Ben slowed, pulling over. The figure approached, a young woman, early 20s maybe, drenched head to toe. Long dark hair plastered to her face, eyes downcast. You need a ride? Ben called out. She nodded silently. No luggage. Just herself. Hop in, he offered, unlocking the passenger door. She climbed in, shivering. Thank you, her voice barely above a whisper. Ben cranked up the heat. No problem. Rough night to be out walking. Where you headed? Just down the road, near Willow Creek, she murmured, staring at her hands. Willow Creek? That's miles from here, Ben thought. Strange. But he shrugged it off, easing back onto the highway. Minutes passed in silence, the hum of the engine and rain the only sounds. Ben glanced at her, soaked clothes clinging to thin arms, eyes distant. You okay? Look like you've been out there a while. She hesitated. Car broke down. I was waiting for someone to stop. Ben nodded. Well, you're lucky I came along. Not many out on this road tonight. She offered a faint smile. I wasn't sure anyone would. As they drove, something gnawed at him. Why is she so quiet? Most hitchhikers he'd picked up in the past, rarely, but still, would chat. Make small talk. This was different. Then, as he passed a mile marker, Willow Creek, 10 miles, the woman spoke again. You should slow down, it's not safe here. Ben glanced at the speedometer, 60 miles per hour. Road's empty. I think we're good. Please. Her voice was urgent now, eyes locking onto his. Just slow down. A chill crawled up his spine. Something in her tone, desperate, pleading, made him ease off the gas. Seconds later, a deer bolted across the road. Right where he would have been. Heart pounding, Ben slammed the brakes, the truck skidding before coming to a halt. Damn, that was close. He turned to thank her. Empty seat. His breath caught. What? Where? The door hadn't opened. No sound of her leaving. She was just there. Heart racing, he scanned the road. No one. No footprints. Just rain and darkness. Then, he noticed something on the seat. A small, old-fashioned locket. Fingers trembling, he picked it up, flipping it open. Inside, her photo. And beneath it, a name etched in faded script. Lily Harper. Familiar. Too familiar. He grabbed his phone, hands shaking, and searched the name. Articles popped up instantly. Local tragedy. Young woman killed on Highway 22, 5 years ago. Hitchhiking home before fatal accident. Ben's blood ran cold. The photo in the article? Her. The same girl he'd just picked up. The headline hit him like a punch to the gut. Family warns drivers. Beware the ghost hitchhiker of Willow Creek. His heart pounded. This can't be real. But the locket in his hand felt very real. Cold. Heavy. Undeniable. And as he looked back at the road, headlights appeared in the distance, approaching fast. Too fast. Then, her voice. Right beside him. Thank you for stopping. Not everyone does. Ben's scream echoed through the night. Ben's hands trembled as he stared at the empty passenger seat. She was just there. His pulse pounded in his ears, heart thundering against his ribs. The rain continued to hammer the windshield, but the warmth from earlier was gone, replaced by a suffocating chill that seemed to seep into his bones. His fingers clenched around the locket. Cold, metallic, undeniably real. He opened it again. Her face. Lily Harper. The same face in the article. The same girl who had sat beside him minutes ago. No, this isn't happening, he whispered. Panic clawed at his throat. He needed to think, needed to get moving. Shoving the locket into his jacket pocket, he shifted into gear and eased back onto the road. But now, every shadow seemed to stretch toward him. Every flicker of light felt wrong. He grabbed his phone, thumbing through the article again. Lily Harper, 23, was last seen hitchhiking along Highway 22 on a stormy night in October, 5 years ago. Her body was found days later near Willow Creek, after a driver swerved to avoid her and crashed. Rumors persist of her ghost still wandering the road, seeking a ride home. Ben's knuckles whitened on the wheel. This is insane, he muttered. Ghosts aren't real. But the memory of her voice, soft, pleading, echoed in his mind. You should slow down, it's not safe here. And she saved me, he thought. That dear. If she hadn't spoken up, he shuddered. A green road sign flashed past. Willow Creek, 5 miles. He debated turning around, driving back toward town, away from this nightmare. But something pulled him forward. Answers. Maybe returning the locket to her family would put this to rest. Minutes later, he spotted a turnoff, a narrow, muddy road leading into the trees. The GPS had long since lost signal, but something deep in his gut said, this is it. Taking a shaky breath, Ben turned down the path. Branches scraped against the sides of the truck. The rain lessened to a drizzle, but the fog thickened, curling around the vehicle in ghostly tendrils. Up ahead, faint lights. A small clearing. A weathered sign read, Willow Creek Cemetery. Ben's stomach twisted. Of course it's a cemetery, he muttered. This is straight out of a horror movie. Killing the engine, he grabbed the locket and stepped out. The air was cold. Too cold. His boots squelched in the mud as he made his way between crooked tombstones, flashlight beam darting through the mist. Then, he saw it. A fresh-looking grave. Flowers wilted but recent enough. His heart sank as he read the inscription. Lily Harper. 1997 to 2020. Forever waiting for the kindness of strangers. Hands shaking, Ben crouched and gently placed the locket on the headstone. I don't know what you wanted from me, he whispered. But I hope this helps. Silence. Just the rain and distant wind. He turned to leave. And froze. There she stood. Just feet away. Pale, soaked, hair clinging to her face. Her eyes, sad. Not malicious. Not angry. Just longing. "Thank you," she whispered. "Not everyone stops." Ben's breath caught. But she faded. Like mist dispersing in the breeze. One moment there, the next, gone. Heart pounding, he stumbled back to his truck. His reflection in the window startled him. Pale, eyes wide with shock. "Get a grip, Ben," he muttered. "You did what you could." Climbing in, he started the engine. The dashboard clock flickered. 2:17 a.m. again. Same time he picked her up. "Nope. Not thinking about that," he said, shifting into drive. He pulled away, the cemetery disappearing into the fog. As he reached the highway, headlights appeared in his rearview mirror. Another car. He hadn't seen anyone all night. But when he glanced back, no road, no car, just her face in the mirror, whispering, "Drive safe. Not everyone gets to go home." Ben's scream echoed through the empty night. Ben's breath came in short gasps, heart hammering in his chest. His knuckles turned white as he gripped the steering wheel, eyes darting to the rearview mirror, nothing there now. No face. No voice. Just his panicked reflection. "Get it together, Ben," he whispered, his voice shaky. "Just get off this road." His GPS flickered to life, though he hadn't touched it. A single route displayed, route, home, ETA. 2:17 a.m. His blood ran cold. No way. He glanced at the dashboard clock. 2:17 a.m. again. Wasn't it 3 a.m. just minutes ago? Time seemed stuck. The rain intensified, a torrential downpour blurring the road. Headlights cut through the sheets of water, but the highway seemed to stretch endlessly ahead. No exits. No landmarks. Just asphalt and trees. Minutes, or was it hours, passed. Fatigue clawed at him, but fear kept his eyes wide. Every mile marker read the same. Willow Creek, 5 miles. "That's impossible," he muttered, checking the odometer. He'd driven miles already, yet, the same sign kept appearing. His phone buzzed on the seat. A text. From an unknown number. "Thanks for the ride, Ben. See you soon." His stomach twisted. No. He tossed the phone aside, breath quickening. Then, headlights in the distance. Relief flooded him. Another car. Maybe they can help. He flashed his high beams, honking. The vehicle approached, familiar shape, same make and model as his rig. Too familiar. As it neared, his stomach dropped. It was his truck. Identical. Same license plate. Same everything. And behind the wheel, himself. Pale, eyes hollow, grinning. What the? Ben slammed the brakes, heart pounding. The other truck mirrored him, braking at the same time. He threw it in reverse, tires screeching. So did the other. "Stop it," he yelled. "This isn't real." Then, the radio crackled to life. His own voice echoed through the static. "There's no going back, Ben. You picked her up." "Why me?" he shouted, panic clawing at his chest. "Because you cared," the voice hissed. "Most drive by. But you stopped. You let her in. And now, you're part of the road." The headlights of the other truck flared blindingly bright. Ben shielded his eyes, then darkness. He woke to silence. Lying on asphalt, rain pattering around him. Slowly, he sat up, head throbbing. His truck, parked nearby, engine idling. No damage. Had it all been a dream? He staggered to his feet, glancing around. Deserted road. No other vehicles. Relief trickled in. "Just stress. Just a nightmare," he muttered. Climbing into the cab, he glanced at the passenger seat. Empty. He started the engine. And froze. The locket. Sitting on the dashboard. Closed. Waiting. His phone buzzed again. Another text. "You can't drive away from the road, Ben. It goes on, forever." Terror gripped him. He threw the truck into gear, flooring it. Speedometer climbed. 70, 90, 110 miles per hour. The road never ended. Glancing at the clock, 2:17 a.m. still. Always. Then, out of the corner of his eye, her. Sitting beside him again. Pale. Eyes distant. "Thanks for the ride," Lily whispered. "Not everyone stops." His scream echoed through the rain-soaked night. But no one heard. Because on Highway 22, no one ever gets off.